Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is traditional African religions at the 21st century. And we have with us to talk about traditional African religions at the 21st century, Dr. LMadu1, our resident expert on everything that is African, Middle East, South America, and other areas, which is to say that, Dr. LMadu1, that our audience should be quite familiar with you and what you bring to this show. And I know we are anxiously anticipating the information that you have in reference to traditional African religions at the 21st century. Why don't you start us off, Dr. LMadu1, by giving us some information in reference to these so-called traditional African religions?
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here again. You know, this is very important, in the 21st century to talk about traditional African religion. Before the slave traders came, before the colonizers came, before Islam came, there was a religion worshipped by predominance of black Africans in Africa. When the slave traders came, they didn't see any crucifix. When the Muslims came, they didn't see any Qurans, and so on and so forth. But Africans had their own religion born out of their culture. And now, because of the misunderstanding, when the colonizers came, they gave it a whole lot of derogatory, names: hedonism, animism, paganism, ancestor worship, etc., etc. But it's none of the above. This is an authentic religion that grew out of people's culture and experiences. Just like Islam grew up in Arabia, this Arabic culture. Christianity grew up in the Middle East, Europe. Africans had their own way of worship. And one can say, what is traditional African religion in essence? Simply, its main thrust, unlike Christianity, is the well-being of the human being today, not in future salvation. Unlike Christianity, which has the Bible, Islam, which has the Quran, Judaism, which has the Torah, the traditional African religion do not have any of these creeds. Its expression arises out of myths, rituals, shrines, and oral traditions. That's how the message is spread. It has no papers or books. Unlike most other religions, it has its own core beliefs in reincarnation, divine healership, exorcism, in the supreme being. All these are part of the beliefs, witchcraft. All these are part of the beliefs of traditional African religions. Now, before the turn of the century, before 1910, 1920s, a predominance of Africans were traditional religionists. Now, after the 1920s, there was a massive evangelization, process by Christians and Muslims. Now, today, though you have, majority of Africans, quote, worshiping, in Christianity or Islam, over 10% of the population in Africa still firmly are traditional religious believers.
So it's a minority of 10, but perhaps 10% of the African population across the continent.
Exactly, a significant number, over 100 million.
Yeah, when you talk about 10% of that group, yeah.
Exactly, over 100 million. Christians are about 500 million in Africa. In black Africa, about 21% of the Christian population in the world. Muslims are about 150 million in black Africa, which tells you that traditional African religion is almost close by. So this is, the basic tenets of this religion. Like Islam, the traditional African religion is a whole way of living, a whole way of life. It believes in the sun, the moon, its effects, how they eat, what they drink, and it has its own moral codes. You have the 10 Commandments. Traditional African religion also has its moral codes that are enforced, by the priests in the rural areas. like Christianity and Islam, it also has its own priests. You've heard of the oraculists and the priest, the high priest in the village. It has its own priest. Now, unlike those religions that have huge, churches and mosques and...
Dr. Booth, let us take this first commercial break. And, of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.